good evening. I call the Planning Commission for May 19th, 2025 to order at 7:02 p.m. First order of business will be roll call. I'm present, Chair Andre Tessman. Vice Chair Kilcup. I do not have her online or in person as of right now. We'll come back to that. Commissioner Hurley.
Present.
Commissioner Lambert. Again, I don't have him online or in person. Commissioner Maruziak.
Present.
Commissioner Murphy.
Present.
All right, so we do have a quorum, and we currently have Commissioners Kilcup and Lambert absent. We do not have emails from either. So at this time, I move that we do not excuse their absences. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion passes. All right. Next item of business will be public hearing. All right. Tonight we have a public hearing regarding the overlay zones color palette. In this proceeding, the community is invited to provide comments regarding both the colors on the palette as well as our approach to providing guidance to those who would change the colors of their buildings in downtown Snoqualmie. No online public comments will be accepted. Written comments submitted in person, by mail, or email were accepted until 3 p.m. today. Those wishing to speak must sign up, and speakers will be called in order according to the sign-up sheet. Okay. Thank you. When your name is called, please come to the podium and state your name, your city of residence for the record. Direct your comments to the commission as a whole and not to individual members. Please note that this is not a time to ask questions of the commission or staff or to engage in debate. The commission will quietly and respectfully listen to your comments. You have 3 minutes to speak. We will now open it to members of the public who wish to speak at time 7:05 p.m. Are you going to call the speakers? All right. Thank you.
Hey, I'm Ashley Grammer, and I'm the owner of June and Gem Ceramic Studio here in downtown. And I live in Snoqualmie. I literally live next door in the Red House, so convenient. I'm here to talk paint colors here. And I printed off the agenda because it looks like we've got some options to choose from. And option number one being basically the revised paint palette with the current colors and some additional colors from the historical palette Sherwin-Williams has. And the other one is a little bit more open-ended. It looks like it's like options, but nothing written in stone, and you can kind of like come with your ideas and you guys have to approve it. And then the last one, it looks like there's the language supplementing the color palette. So basically like some guidance, so you guys have something to refer to. And my 2 cents is that I really like option 1 and 3. So that would be like the revised color palette and the wording, like the language that goes along with it. Pretty much, I think it works really well having pre-selected colors. I do really enjoy the colors that you have chosen. However, there are definitely some colors that I believe are missing from the color palette. And for example, the colors that I think are missing are variations of yellows, blues, pinks, and purples. And I'm talking for the trim, by the way, not the whole house. I also think it would be a good idea to categorize these paint colors. So like having a category for like the shell, a category for the trim, and a category for the accents, which is kind of how we have it right now. But right now it's like specific grouping, and ideally it would be nice to be a little bit more open-ended where you could kind of mix and match. I was saying there are some colors missing, and I did bring by some options. I brought paint swatches. These are all from the Sherwin-Williams historical section, and these are all okay to be exterior paints specifically, even though some of them are technically in the indoor. I asked, they said they can make them exterior. But yeah, so I basically just wanted to say that I think that the pre-selected colors is a good idea. I do also think that having some guidance, like verbal guidance or wording to kind of specify what you guys mean as far as like having, like the body of the house be either a dark color or light color and have the accents and trim be a contrasting color makes sense. But I do think it's important to have more options for other colors that are lacking, like I was saying, yellow, pink, blue, and what was the last one? Purple. And yeah, I could pass these around. I don't know if I'm allowed to do that, but I will if you let me.
Sure.
Yeah? Okay, sweet. That's my time. Thank you. Oh.
Thank you. I do not see anyone else in attendance in person. And I apologize. I realize I should have had Mr. Love come up and present beforehand. So let me close public comments since we have no more people in person to take comments from. Then we'll come back to you, Mr. Love, and maybe you can address some of those concerns as you outline your research. So let's go ahead and close the public hearing at time 7:09. And I turn it over to you, Mr. Love.
Thank you. Let me get the presentation shared. All right, so just a quick background, Chapter 1735 of the Snoqualmie Municipal Code requires historical design review for overlay zones, the landmark district, and individual landmarks as designated by the Snoqualmie Landmarks Commission. This same chapter has different levels of review, with type 1 being administrative, meaning city staff would be approving the permit or denying it or whatnot, and exterior painting of non-contributing buildings or structures using approved colors is considered type 1. Now, when we get to the type 2 project, this would require review with the Historical Design Review Board, or basically the Planning Commission as it's functioning currently. This includes any alteration in exterior appearance to contributing buildings. Or for non-contributing buildings, proposed colors that fall outside of the approved color palette. For reference, I'm including definitions for contributing building or site and non-contributing building or site, which can also be found in Chapter 1735. I wanted to include this map again, just in case we had any new participants joining us this evening who haven't seen it already, but you can see that the black outline areas are the overlay districts, and the orange outline is the commercial landmark district. And then just a brief review of how we've got here. Mona took this to Director Davis, took this when she was senior planner to the Planning Commission in February. And in the last meeting on May 5th, King County Historic Preservation came to present. And we received public comment from 2 community members and in addition, Councilmember Johnson. After a lengthy discussion of options and weighing pros and cons, the Planning Commission gave guidance to staff on what they would like to see for this public hearing. And thus I attempted to hit the mark with the following. So on the screen, you can see attachment 1 and 2 as they're in the packet side by side. The attachment 1 is basically the current Snoqualmie color palette with the added option to mix and match, and adding the 24 identified Sherwin-Williams colors. It's hard to see right now, but the hex code and RGB code is also below each individual color. And we would allow color matching of any paint brand. So just because it's Sherwin-Williams or Benjamin Moore doesn't mean you would have to use that brand. In contrast, attachment 2 on the right is a draft option of a less rigid color palette, what it could look like using the city of Carnation as an example. And you can see that, browns, grays, and darker saturated colors, whites, are allowed for trim in the basic building shell. I propose to limit the extremely dark colors to just trim and accent as well as pastels. And then brighter colors, including neons, fluorescents, and such, would not be allowed for building or trim or accent based on what I heard from Planning Commission. But certainly this, either of these attachments could change depending on feedback. Lastly, I won't read all the text, but I just want to include the text from attachment 3. It's essentially example language that could supplement the color guidelines, depending on Planning Commission feedback. I did want to bold this last line under subsection D, where it talks about contrasting colors. There were some concerns after I put the materials together that there could potentially be too many buildings downtown that are, for example, white and black, and that eventually the city could lose some of its charm if every color is the same. So I just made that bold with the intention that if that could be beefed up, if the Planning Commission thought that would be a good idea. For example, instead of consideration should be given to contrasting the colors of new or remodeled buildings with the colors of the existing buildings in its vicinity, it could be changed to shall be given. And here are just a couple of example images from the Burien Code where these standards could be, basically the standards would meet these buildings. So you have the darker base color and a lighter trim, which looks pretty attractive. And then on the right image, you have a lighter base color and a darker version of the trim. And then this is continued text from attachment 3. There's if the Planning Commission is interested, there's some additional criteria that could be applied. For example, avoiding the painting of brick, all finished natural wood tones are permitted, and an exception that in the case a historic color is found to have been used on an individual Snoqualmie landmark, such as the Depot building, which doesn't strictly meet any of the existing color palette, but was tested and they determined that the building was indeed red at one point, then that would be permitted in a similar manner. And that's all, optional and could be changed depending on your preferences. I also wanted to include a couple pictures of buildings from downtown Snoqualmie. They're already kind of following the draft language that is in attachment 3. For example, the hardware store has a lighter base color with a darker green trim with white accents, and the Depot is darker, base color with the lighter trim. White looks particularly nice. And it is important to note that these exact colors may not accurately match any if we were to continue with the strict color palette, but they were likely determined these colors during the landmarking process. And then before I wrap it up, there's some additional pictures that we wanted to include to avoid having you stare at text all night. So there's I forget the name of the city, but there's a city in Washington that just an example of trying to find a good happy medium. We don't necessarily, based on what I've heard, we don't necessarily want like bright blue and yellow to be the whole building. But some pictures on the right may show some, little bit of, they're still mostly white and brown, let's be honest, but a little bit extra flair. So could be, little pops of accent colors. So the suggested options after, hearing, I don't think there's any additional public testimony, but some options would be to either hear if additional color samples or other refinements to any of the attachments are needed to proceed with a recommendation. In that case, we would refine what we have so far and come back to Planning Commission, or Planning Commission could potentially make a recommendation tonight. And that concludes my presentation. I'll take any questions if you have them.
Thanks, Mr. Love. go through commissioners for questions. Vice Chair Kilcup?
No, that was a great, bringing everything together from all these discussions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Marzia?
No, I'm fine, thanks.
Commissioner Murphy?
This is great. Yeah, I thought this was like super clear and comprehensive. A quick question, and this was, I think, probably clarified in several meetings, but I just want to like have it settle out again. For option one with the additional colors plus the 24 identified Sherwin-Williams options. What happens if, I think this is what the hex values speak to, but what happens if those colors go out of production, they change, it's not the exact, those colors don't exist exactly anymore. How do we solve for that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll have to be honest, I got those, the hex code and the RGB values from a site that I believe I credited on somewhere in the staff memo, but it's basically like a paint mixing website that you can kind of put in one brand of paint and it'll spit out an equivalent, rough equivalent. So that's how I got those values. The staff could get actual paint chip samples once we determined what colors were the official colors. That way people could come in and with their own samples and we could do like a visual match of what the color is. Because at this time, just printing them, the color may not be exactly correct, but I hope that kind of.
So the point is, it makes it so like we're not like boxed into these specific names or these brands of paint and color. It gives staff and the city the ability to like approve these colors, even though they may not be called Rookwood red or whatever it may be. It's those properties.
Yes.
Yeah, Commissioner Murphy, I'd add the check or the flexibility will come from the fact that the community development director will still review the applications, compare the requested paint color to what exists and whether it's still called fire engine red or not. You know, this will just provide the means for applicants to not view a decision as arbitrary, is my read, unless I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I also really appreciate the sample guidance language that you provided. I think some of that context is important context to provide in addition to the expanded palette. So, but no further questions.
Commissioner Hurley?
I don't have any further questions, but I'd like to reiterate, thank you very much for putting this together. This is sort of consolidated about 8 hours worth of discussion. So
Yeah,
I
my
really
pleasure.
appreciate you assembling it in such a useful way. So thank you.
Vice Chair Cook, do you have some?
Oh, it's not a direct question. Well, I guess it could be. Did you see anywhere in the other cities and how it's done that we could say something like having the likeness and character of this color palette? So that this is the general vibe we're going for? Was there anything like that you can recall, or do you see that being problematic?
I guess it would depend on if you wanted to go more the guide route or the strict kind of standard route. I actually used a lot of the colors from attachment 1 in attachment 2. So it kind of, yeah, I can't off the top of my head think if there was really any recommended, like instances where cities kind of had a recommended color palette without requiring it.
Okay.
More so just general language about it.
Okay. That's all. Thank you.
All right.
Chair, I have one more thing to add to this. I think we should perhaps give consideration to, I know Ms. Grammer's sent us we just took a look at those now. I'd love to find some way to incorporate some or all of those into the approved like palette that we would consider.
Yeah. Thank you so much for raising that. So Ms. Grammer provided 12 color samples. We have them. I guess the question I would propose to the commission is, do we want to amend what's listed here on appendix or exhibit 1, item 1, to include all or some? Is there, yeah? Commissioner Cook?
I was wondering if we could add some kind of, I love those colors, by the way. A couple of the yellows, I'm like, not sure, really depends on what they got mixed with, but in general, I just think it's a yes to adding. Can we add something like that those can only be used on trim or accent and only one? Pick your favorite, so that we don't end up getting like a rainbow something going on.
Yeah, so looking at, I guess it's exhibit 2, so the visual guidance of acceptable building color examples. Mr. Love did include that pastels will be limited to trim or accents, max of 10% of facade. Does that address your concern?
Exactly.
How similar are those fragments to this pastel group here?
I mean, just with the naked eye, actually more muted, I would say.
Yeah.
And I can certainly send them back if you'd like again.
If you wouldn't mind, thank you.
So we have the guidance in the pastels. I guess before I circle around and poll each commissioner on including all or some of those colors, I do want to draw your attention to the example language to supplement color palette. Were there any commissioner issues or requested amendments to what's written there? Actually, I'll just read them for everyone. So, A, muted and dark saturated colors, browns, grays, whites, or other neutral colors shall be utilized for the primary background of buildings / the building shell. All right. If you have an objection, just call it after I read it. B, extremely dark colors and pastels shall be limited to trim and accents, generally no more than 10% of the facade. All right. C, bright, neon, fluorescent, or day glow colors of any shade are prohibited. All right. Contrasting colors should be utilized for trim. For example, where a dark background color is used for the shell of the building, white trim works particularly well. Darker trim colors can be effective where lighter colors are used for the basic building shell. Consideration should be given to contrasting the colors of new or remodeled buildings with the colors of the existing buildings in its vicinity. So I think that talks to that historical character.
Chair.
Yeah.
I just want to make one clarification on that. Should can be a little loosey-goosey when you're talking with the applicants and they say, well, it says it should, it doesn't say they shall. So do you want to change that wording to shall?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that one should be a shall. And then do we feel the same way about the generally no more than 10% of the facade on item B? No? We're okay with exceeding that?
That's okay.
Sense come to 12%.
Yeah.
But it makes sense.
Okay, fair enough. All right, E, so with that change to D to shall. E, avoid painting factory colors of stone and brick. So avoid. Stone and brick provide naturally durable colors and finishes that would be lost or damaged if painted. Painting or staining of stone and brick is prohibited.
Can we add natural wood to that as well? Is that possible?
I think it's already on there, isn't it? The next one down. it talks about
Naturally
natural-
durable colors and finishes that would be lost or damaged if painted.
Stone and
Oh,
brick.
that's F, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. So you're good on that,
Yeah.
Vice Chair Cook? Okay. F, all finished natural wood tones are permitted. So are you are you saying you want to prevent alteration?
Avoid. So,
Avoid alteration?
yeah, try to avoid. I'd like to add natural wood to stone and brick.
To clause E or whatever?
Yeah,
To avoid painting.
yeah.
Painting or staining of natural wood, stone, and brick is prohibited?
Yeah. Any?
Clarifying
objection?
question,
Yeah.
what's natural wood? What do
Yeah,
we mean
that's,
by
that's,
that?
that's gonna get
Yeah.
a bit
Like
ambiguous.
wood grain. I don't mind staining.
Well, technically plywood's natural wood too, so it's like, you know what I mean? Like, it has to be some surface that's being painted, right?
agree. I
It's
don't know
so
the right
I mean,
answer.
if it's concrete or Adobe or something like that, that's obvious, but if it's just a wooden facade, then are we telling them they can't paint over it?
Ex-
And the problem with wood is, paint is a sealer, so,
mhm.
weatherproofer.
It does say, I believe in F, that it recommends to put treated natural wood.
Say it
So,
again, Commissioner Hurley?
I believe in F, it talks about treated natural wood, that it's been sealed. Right.
So are you saying add that to F?
I'm saying it's already in F, so I think we're already covering that.
All finished. yeah,
Finished.
Yeah. Okay, so do we feel okay about, painting wood
I think.
outside of stains?
Yeah.
Okay. So no objections, okay. All right, G, exception, if a historic color is found to have been used on an individual Snoqualmie landmark or a contributing building within the landmark district through the use of laboratory testing, the color shall be permitted in a similar manner.
Is that how they figured out the train depot?
I believe so.
Yeah, I was like, how did they figure? It's black and white photos.
Yeah, I think that they went down, they did some testing and went down, if I recall, Mr. Anderson's testimony at one of our hearings or one of our meetings.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's fine though.
Uh-huh.
I mean, if somebody wants to
Gives a method.
make the case that this is a natural or a
Mhm.
historic color, yeah.
Mhm.
Commissioner Murphy?
I think in addition to these, I think Mr. Love also had some language in the deck that spoke to like making sure the buildings weren't the same color or that there was some diversity of color in town. I think it was one of your slides. I'm not quite sure which one it was, but
Consideration will be given
yeah,
to-
you'd mentioned that as like an added some added supplemental language that might be helpul.
Are you able to
Could
raise
you,
that
could you
slide?
put that back up?
Yeah.
Am I just imagining that or did
Oh,
that?
well, I
already
think
happen?
Who was the
It's just not on this list here. It stops at G, so.
I remember it in like bold, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was.
Yeah, the bold sentence at the end, consideration should be given to contrasting the colors of newer remodeled buildings.
I like that.
I think that's.
So you'd like
It
to
is there,
add
it's
that
part of
as-
D. It's just not bolded.
Say that again?
It's in there.
Oh, it's in there. Okay,
Yeah, it's part of D.
okay. So we're good then.
So
Oh, okay,
we're
so-
still good with this. The bolded text would be shall instead of should.
Yes. That's when we changed.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Just wanted to be sure.
And just for clarity, Commission, did we say we wanted F and E combined, or were we okay to leave it as they are, no modifications to E and F?
I'm fine with it as
Yeah,
it is.
we can
Yeah.
leave it as is.
Leave it, okay. All right. Great. Does any commissioner want to make a motion?
Could I ask just one last thing? The list of pastels that is on the second set of colors, it does have a purple, it has a blue. It doesn't really have a pink or more of a teal, which is what Ms. Grammer is actually specifically requesting. Can we add these two to that?
I think we're adding all of those
We're adding all of these.
to
Okay.
the pastels.
Okay, great.
Mhm.
That's kind of what I'm looking for on
Fantastic, thank you.
motions.
I move that we approve this package with the addition of those pastel colors to the pastel option, as well as the changing of the language should to shall.
All right, and so that would bump us to 52 total approved colors with guidelines.
There, there's,
Can we get the names of the pastels for the record?
They're coming back down.
Oh,
to you.
okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
They're
here
in
they
the
come.
email as well as.
Okay.
She brought samples.
Okay, you have to call them all out.
Really?
You made the motion.
Okay. Correct. Specifically.
You need it read, right?
Yeah, if we could just get that encompassed with the motion, that just
Yes,
clarifies.
okay,
things for
so the
later.
addition of the pastel colors will include, for the purples, Queen Anne lilac. Do you want me to also read the Sherman-Williams number?
I think if you can just do that and then we'll,
Okay,
because this is coming back, so we'll get the hex color and everything. in.
okay. Orchid, Studio Mauve. For the blues, Dutch blue tile. Festoon Aqua, Open Blue, Yellows, Classic Yellow, Belvedere Cream, Sunbeam Yellow, Pinks, Rachel Pink, Cabbage Rose, Pink Shadow. That good?
Yeah. Can I get a second?
Seconded.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? None.
I
Motion
will add-
passes.
I guess I was, my intention was that you would either want the one on the left or the right. Like,
No, we like all your work.
okay, so in that case, then, okay, so because some of the colors on the right are not on, like, some of the colors that are approved on the right version are not on the left. Does that make
Vice
sense?
Chair Coco?
I would move that we sort the colors on the left into this organization on the right.
Okay,
I trust your judgment.
So any other commissioners?
And then have the codes for all of them included.
So I viewed it as those 40 colors are straight up approved, right? No variations or whatever are needed. Forgot the term.
Variance.
Variance. And and given the expanded palette, as property owners figure out what they're trying to do, their color scheme, they've got that as guidance.
Yeah, that's
Right.
what I thought too.
In addition to the actual written guidance that we just went through. But so are we saying we want, no kidding, those colors, if they fall under brown and warm neutrals listed there, boom, boom, boom?
That type of usage, well, I think it goes to community development director does that feel clear for you, for administratives?
Well, I am kind of looking at both of these and wondering, I don't know, Andrew, if you've got the ability, I know you've got the color samples on our existing colors, but like for this, are you able to get those samples or those colors? How would you effectively show that, like you did here on this?
well, maybe I should have been more specific. When I created the second attachment, that was kind of after hearing the feedback that basically trying to bring it back an option before planning commission that didn't have any like required colors, more of like, here are the basics. Here's like the guide, like, you know what I mean? Like, here's the guidance. Here's not like the actual pastel blue that you need to use, but here's like example colors.
So it's like option A, option B.
I can
They're-
easily like kind of merge it so that we still have the strict color palette, but there's also the guidance on the right, but the colors shown would only be the ones that are on the left, plus the added ones that you listed. Does that make sense?
I think so. You're just basically gonna put the
Yeah.
left into the right,
Yes.
organized, and
Yeah,
then,
yeah, yeah.
and then I think maybe the names on was part of someone's request. Is that gonna screw up the graphic?
Commissioner Hurley?
Oh.
Sorry, it feels like we're just started talking about two different things. In putting this together, you're talking about these being one of these or the other, and we're talking about it being both. One of them as these are approved colors, these are more guidance for any additional colors. Sorry, I'm not quite understanding what you're saying about trying to combine the two of them together.
Yeah, actually, I think if I may, I think there are three things at play here, right? So, and hopefully I don't lose myself because I don't have a dry erase board. One, you pick either the left or the right, and that's the guidance. Two, you basically adopt both, where one are the specific colors that are approved on the left, and on the right, it's just general design guidance, which is amplified upon by the written guidance. Or three, you take the explicit colors that are approved on the left and you populate them in place of the existing colors on the right into one product where whatever colors that are on the left that are approved that fall into browns and warm neutrals populates that, and so on and so forth. Those are the three that I see. Is that anything wrong? Okay. So let me poll and see where we are on that, and then we can make a motion accordingly. Vice Chair Coco?
Before we do that, is that also, because ultimately it's gonna be you who's trying to administer this? Does that make sense to you?
I'm not sure it totally makes sense to me, but I'm grasping that Andrew thinks it makes sense to him, and you have a good feel on how to merge these two together. That's what my only worry is, like, I'm not really following how you're gonna do that. Adding these additional colors, is that going on this exhibit with the actual colors named?
So the end-
Can I tell you? He's just gonna bucketize the colors on the left into the brown and warm neutrals bucket, gray and cool neutrals bucket,
Hmm.
dark saturated colors bucket, and so forth. Bunch of the approved, the new colors added tonight, obviously will fall in the pastels. But that's what would happen.
Okay, so we'll add the 8 colors onto this graphic that we've entered into the record tonight.
That's right.
And then we'll take only those, how many colors are there? 40 plus 8 now?
It's
40,
52 total
52
colors.
Total
Yep.
colors. And then you'll kind of put those where they best belong in this list without actually identifying the color. Okay, I just want to make sure that that was going to work because I know it was a bit of a struggle to put this together.
Not really. It was just some of the colors, like the pastels on the right, they're, like, I basically had to kind of, I did not use all the colors on the left on the right. Obviously, for the bright colors, I'll leave them the same because they're not allowed regardless. But yeah,
But you don't have any pastels shown on the left.
Can we replace the current pastels with the ones that were provided by Ms. Kramer?
yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's a strength I think,
Check one, mute yourself.
I think that's the strength of, the third approach that we
Yes.
described.
Merging,
Yeah.
like, so it's
At
ordered
first
and they're
yeah,
all represented.
yeah,
And I think there's less confusion if there's just one.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so as I understand it, and I'd love it if someone would make a motion on it. We have 52 following the motion that just passed. We have 52 approved colors. And so it looks like the motion would be something on the order of 52 colors reflected according to their tonal category on the exhibit on the right, coupled with the written guidance would be the recommendation to council. Right?
Yes.
Anyone want to make a motion on that?
You can make the motion.
I just have one clarifying question because as I'm looking at these colors here, I'm not seeing white. We've had several requests lately to paint buildings white.
It does
With-
say white on the fourth one down. I'm wondering
There's
whether-
white there. There's off-white.
There's an off-white, but
Whites and off-whites.
we could potentially put just an empty box that, because it's white on white, right?
But we could have the hex color.
Just
Yeah,
put
so
a
we
put a
can
border
add-
around a white.
We can add a white color. Well, we have Navajo white, but I don't think the Navajo white, the Lancaster whitewash, the sailcloth are all kind of light beigey, creamy whites, but there's nothing really true white. And I just want to make sure we address that tonight
Yeah,
because that's going to come up.
I agree.
So we want to add the color white. Would that make 53 colors? Or should we remove one of these other colors to,
I'd say just make it 53.
okay,
Okay, so I move that we replace the pastels with the proposed new pastel colors and take the option, attachment 1 and organize it into attachment 2 so that all the colors are represented as well as the rules and the written component that helps explain further.
Can I get a second?
I had a quick clarifying question. So
Hmm.
the existing colors we see on the right are more placeholders. They move out and swapped for what's on the left.
Yes.
All 53 colors that we've talked about and approved will get organized and reflected on the exhibit on the right. the current exhibit on the left will go away because it's embedded into the one on the right. And then you'll see two things. You'll see the exhibit on the right and you'll see those written guidelines.
Great.
And the addition of white. Pure
Right,
white.
for 53, yep.
Mhm.
0000.
And the current bright colors staying on there is disavowed.
Correct, yeah, yes. So 53 plus those.
Right.
I second the motion.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you so much for your work, Mr. Love, and thank you so much, Ms. Ashley, for your feedback and the wonderful color additions.
And thank you for everybody online who submitted an email
100%.
giving some feedback on it too.
All right, thank you. Let's get back. Okay, so that concludes both the public hearing and staff discussion and ultimate motions on overlay zones color palette. Public comment was received. Actually, is there any public comment for other items on the agenda for those in person? Please.
Not to make the color thing more complicated, but I just had a question to clarify. Have you guys considered whether or not you'll have a rule on if the colors chosen for trim and accents need to be in the same color family or temperature?
I
You know what I
think
mean?
it will, we're just going to default to the style guidelines and then the tonal families.
Okay, cool.
She brings up a good point, though. You could do some.
Well, because like
statement
the,
both.
yeah,
Yeah.
like, because sometimes yes, some people might choose like, let's say pink for the trim and blue for the accent. I don't know. But my question is that going to be really like too clashing, or would you want something within like the same side of the color wheel, if
I-
that makes sense?
So, yeah, and, I'm thinking of it from, decision-making perspective, right? And I think, our goal in all this has been to reduce the room for any decisions to be arbitrary or to
Yeah.
be perceived as arbitrary. I think we've accomplished that, and I think that through the verbiage that was just approved in the motion, the community development director will have the flexibility under the caveat that any proposed colors be in harmony
Yeah,
with
yeah.
what exists around the site or whatever. So I
Cool.
think that allows the community development director to prevent that
Okay, great.
without being capricious.
Okay, awesome. I just had to make sure because I was like, I can guarantee you somebody's going to pick some crazy stuff at some point. So,
Exactly, which is why we have put the work into this approach, yeah. Thank you for that.
That's a good point.
All right, so we'll close public comments at 7:46. All right, and looking now, I feel like this is out of order. So looking at the minutes for we don't have them actually, do we? Okay, so that doesn't need to be moved. Okay, thank you. All right, then I move that we approve the agenda as written for today, May 19th, 2025. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. Motion passes. Thank you. All right, Councilmember Johnson for the council liaison report.
All right, good evening, Planning Commission. The only item I want to discuss tonight was about the utility rates. The council did adopt new utility rates based on our utility rate study that took the better part of a year to get done. So periodically, cities review their utility rates to see, excuse me, if they are bringing in enough revenue. In some cases, too much revenue, or in really rare cases, the exact right amount of revenue. Expenditures can change quite a bit, even over a 2-year period. There are unexpected major projects that can come up that need to be done. Staffing costs change, and state and federal requirements can change that cause us to do various things that can be very expensive and are not always funded through those sources. In our case, there was at least one major project that needed to be done that was not foreseen the last time we went through this, and our rates also had not been keeping up with inflation during that time period because they had been what were set the last time. Um, so this led to the requirement of additional revenue, which basically boils down to some rate increases. The council originally, and I believe that I explained this to the commission back then, this was in fall last year, I believe, that the council originally looked at three alternatives. There was the 100% pay it with cash, which would have caused us to have to increase, as an example, the average residential rate by about 81% next year, which didn't go very far, of course, as a proposal. But that's sort of one bookend. And then another bookend would be to maximize debt, which means staying at or near the city's current borrowing limit in order to maintain the fund balance and also the city's credit rating. And that would have been, as another extreme, about a 10%-ish combined increase for residential. The council at the time then opted for kind of a hybrid approach. There was a little bit of both, but mostly leaning on maximizing debt. And that led to somewhere around a 14% combined increase for residential. So that was the choice the council had originally gone with. However, several considerations were made for rebalancing the rates for multifamily housing, which has historically for years been, relatively speaking, disproportionately paying more than other ratepayers, and that high commercial had been disproportionately paying less. So to kind of rebalance that, the numbers had to be refinagled. And there is actually a formula for that, and you can find that on the city's website, if I can find where that was. The title of the page you could look at is Utility Rate Changes 2025 to 2030, and it goes through kind of the whole history of our rate changes starting in June 2024 as we began this process. Right. Yeah, so you can find where exactly. In fact, I'll even tell you which slide it was on there. Yeah, so it was the last slide on the December 9th, 2024 presentation, where it kind of explains how those numbers were adjusted based on the customer. So commercial would have ended up, if we had stayed with the hybrid, paying an unacceptably large rate increase. And based on feedback from the community, the hybrid rates were still considered to be too high kind of across the board. So in further discussions, the council found that the very low interest rate the city would get from maximizing debt and borrowing meant that in the long run, it'd be more advantageous to go with option 2, which was maximizing debt. And our contractor who conducted our rate study was able to whittle the combined residential down to about a 7%-ish increase. But that does offset a little bit with some additional costs to commercial. But that was the most fair and balanced way that council and the rate study could come to as far as we could see. So that's what we did. Yeah. You can find the actual numbers in the ordinance that was passed at our last council meeting on February, what month is this? May 12th. And that's all I got for you.
All right. Poll for questions, Vice Chair Kilcup,
None for me.
Commissioner Muzak.
Yeah, I feel compelled to ask. I saw the announcements on the police decision from North Bend and was kind of surprised at the comments of from North Bend of a broken relationship and things of that nature. So could you kind of expand on how we got to that point? Because I was caught completely off guard by that.
Let's see. So first turning to my turning here, what can I say and what can I not say?
I think for now, can we just keep it it's an ongoing thing that we're working on with North Bend regarding
Yeah.
so I think we want to keep our comments limited for now.
Yeah, thank you. I do appreciate the question, but given where we're at right now with North Bend, it would probably be best if I didn't answer.
Okay.
Commissioner Murphy?
I think I'll pass this week, so no questions.
Commissioner Hurley?
Nothing for me.
All right. No questions, I don't think, but I think, I mean, I feel like it goes without saying, but this is a momentous event for the city. And I don't think I'm alone in saying that, Councilmember Benson, in his comments, in that meeting, he said it himself. He said, the option here is really two diminished police departments, right? North Bend under King County, which we feel is a lower level of service, and then our own. And they've made their decision, and so now we're left with potentially a diminished police department. So I think that's top of mind for everyone I know. So I would just highlight that.
Thank you.
Yeah, Commissioner
And
Murphy?
just, one more comment there. It's just, I think it's like sad, right? And I think we have friends, neighbors, family members, so call me North
Sure.
Bend or like, I'm sorry.
You're making us nervous.
Yeah,
Okay.
I
Okay.
think I would ask that we keep to the planning commission aspect of this.
Okay. All right.
I certainly appreciate the intent.
Yes.
All right. Anything else for Councilmember Johnson? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, old business. We have the draft climate element. Director Davis?
Yes, we should have Chris Green from OTAC. We've provided information in your packet materials that hopefully you've had a chance to go through ahead of this meeting to review draft goals and policies. Chris is going to come in tonight and provide a little higher level presentation from the last one.
I
Chris?
see Mr. Archer from OTAC.
Oh,
Yes.
maybe
Christina H.
Kristen H? Yes, that sounds right. Can
Yeah,
we?
Christina Hayworth. Yeah.
So it's Christina H.
Okay.
There,
Christina, are you giving a presentation for Chris Green tonight?
Yes, I am. I have been working with Chris for the last few months on the materials. He's not able to join us tonight, but I am here. You've not seen my face. You may have seen my name on some of the materials that have been circulated, but I will be delivering a presentation on Chris's behalf and collecting any of your comments and feedback on our material.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, can you state your full name and your position with OTAC again for us?
Yes, my name is Christina Hayworth. I am a senior planner with OTAC. And the last name is Haworth for the record.
Okay, and I see that we have your name here on the memo as well.
Yes,
That was provided by Chris, so thank you for that. Okay,
certainly.
well, if you would like to begin.
I will bring up my slides. Give me one moment, please, while I share my screen. Can everybody see
Not yet.
my slides? Okay.
Now we can.
Okay, great. All right, so it's a pleasure to meet you all. Like I said, my name is Christina. I've been working with Chris for a little while now on preparing some of the materials related to resilience and greenhouse gas emissions reduction. I understand that he went over some of this material to a certain degree, I think a couple of weeks ago with you. So I am going to let you tell me to skip ahead as needed. But we'll we'll be looking first at the resilience goals. You should have a several page sheet in your packet tonight that has the resilience goals and some recommended policies and some ideas for what implementation actions could look like. Not that those are necessarily the implementation actions that would come from these goals or policies, but to give you an idea of where you could be headed potentially. You have a similar attachment related to greenhouse gas emissions reduction goals and policies. We'll be going through the inventory that led to the development of some of those goals, as well as the goals themselves. Feel free to stop me at any time with questions, but I also do have a placeholder at the end of our slideshow for any questions or further discussion. So with that, I'll turn to the resilience sub-element. And if you do pull out that attachment from your packet, we'll be going through the goals in order. So as a reminder, this is kind of where we're at in the process of developing the resilience sub-element. So we've done a lot of work to explore climate impacts, take a look at your existing policy framework and understand where there are gaps and where there aren't relative to the potential risks and exposure that Snoqualmie has. We've taken a look at the assets that the community has identified as critically important for whatever reason to Snoqualmie, whether that's the base function of the city or whether that's a cultural treasure. So we've taken a look at those assets to understand how they might be affected by changing climate. And we've started to look at some recommendations for how to fill some of those gaps and make sure that all of those assets are protected into the future. That's where we're at right now, taking a look at adapting existing goals and policies and developing some new goals and policies to roll up into a final draft element for review. Our element needs to accomplish these three major things, needs to address natural hazards that Snoqualmie is at risk for. You'll typically see those described as wildfire, flooding and extreme precipitation, extreme heat, and drought. Those cover all of these, including some of the interrelationships between them. Requirement number 2 is to identify, protect, and enhance natural areas that foster climate resilience. And requirement number 3 is to identify, protect, and enhance community resilience to climate impacts with a specific focus on environmental justice for disadvantaged populations. The goals that we have put together based on all of the work that we have done up to this point begin with, in no particular order, goal number 1, which is to enhance emergency preparedness, response, and recovery efforts to mitigate risks and impacts associated with extreme weather and other hazards worsened by climate change. This particular goal builds on some of the excellent work that is in your hazard mitigation plan, but expands it a little bit more to focus specifically on climate change and to mention some of the hazards that Snoqualmie is likely most at risk for, in particular, extreme weather changes, extreme heat, extreme precipitation that lead to some of the other challenges in the community. Does anybody have any questions or specific feedback on this goal? I would love for this to be an interactive session, but if you'd like me to just blaze through them, I certainly can.
No, I think let's plan on, as each goal is presented, I'll poll commissioners for questions if that works.
Great. And I do encourage you also to look at your handout, skim the policies or potential implementation actions and ask questions about those as well. I am prepared to speak to any of that.
One question for you. So when we look at page 23 of the packet, 23 of the packet, it looks like you have the goals and then I guess sub-elements of the goals and how they'll be achieved. Do you want us to weigh in on that now, or are we going to get to that in the presentation?
Please weigh in on that now. I don't have the subparts, those are all the policies that would fall under the goal. Those are not separately listed in my slide deck. I did have them that way, but because the slide deck was so bloated, I had to take them out. So if you do have questions on those policies, please bring them up at this point, yes.
Yeah, Commissioner Mirza?
Well, I have a question on goal number one.
Yeah, let me poll, let me give Vice Chair Cook up. Do you have any questions?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, you mentioned enhance emergency preparedness response. I attended the fire department strategy meeting a few years ago. And it was said if you're gonna have a cardiac arrest anywhere in the state of Washington, Snoqualmie's the place to do it because the fire department shows up within a couple minutes and they know what they're doing. So I'm not sure what we're enhancing there. Is it enhancing for, I mean, what exactly does that mean? Because there's set goals in that. Is it to maintain those in the event of climate change? Is it, I mean, what does that mean?
So um, in this case, we are looking at some of the effects of climate change, more specifically, less, I mean, certainly public health or individual health issues are potentially related to those, the climate impacts that we might see. For example, wildfire smoke might exacerbate some respiratory issues that could lead to more emergency response, first responder activity. But overall, we're thinking more about preparedness in the event of like a hazard or a disaster situation. So, for example, enhancing preparedness to respond to a wildfire event or to respond to the kind of flooding event that you don't see very often, but that will become more frequent as time goes on due to the changing climate. So it's less about the skills to be a first responder and to respond to a specific medical emergency, and more about a broader community-wide response to a hazard scenario, if that makes sense.
Generally, it does. I mean, I think it'd be good to be specific about a few of the hazards. I mean, I could see saying in the event of hazards such as dramatically reduced air quality due to wildfires or something like that, or, extremely long floods. I mean, just a couple examples of the hazards to say that it's not um, it's basically addressing hazards related to climate change.
Certainly, yes, we can add some clarification there. Thank you.
And forgive me because I think this might speak to what you're curious about. And so this is for Director Davis. Is the goal for tonight to recommend approval of pages 23 through, 29? Council?
No, tonight we're just opening this for discussion, so
Okay.
we're not expecting any type of a
Action.
action tonight.
Okay. And the reason I ask that is, so is it beneficial for precision to go over each of those sub goals by policy ID 1.1, 1.2? Are you looking for feedback on that?
In a perfect world, I would get feedback on all of that. It is a lot of material to get through tonight. So I understand if we can't go line by line. But this is the point where your feedback would be most beneficial as we are starting to put the actual draft element together, which would be the next thing you see for this
Okay.
project.
So commissioners, I'd ask maybe focus your questions and comments first on the goal as presented in the slide deck, and then second, if any sub goal strikes your fancy, if you want to weigh in on that. Did you have anything else, Commissioner Rizzo? Commissioner Murphy?
No, nothing right now.
Commissioner Hurley?
The only question I had was when it discusses emergency preparedness, response, recovery efforts to mitigate risks and impacts associated with extreme weather and other hazards. I read through this today. I didn't see where it specifically talked about what the likely changes would be. It talked about increased precipitation, and it talked about snow being sort of rolled in with that. But if we could get perhaps maybe a little bit more of a descriptive list of what the likely outcomes of climate change are going to be for the town from an environmental standpoint. And if perhaps I didn't see it in there, if you could point that out to me, please.
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
sorry. I was going to say, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that information would be part of your introduction in the main base of the element. And then that would lead into the goals and policies that would address that. So I think that will probably be in there when you see a full draft of the climate element.
Okay.
Is that correct, Christina?
That is correct. And I had taken the question to be, do we have that information available tonight? Do you need me to go over that quickly?
No, that's fine. If it's
Okay.
in here, then
It will,
just know that that is being addressed because I just, it sounds like you guys are looking at a lot of different kinds of scenarios. I just like to see maybe a little bit more detail about what those scenarios potentially could be and what the steps to mitigate them are. So, but it sounds like that's coming. So,
Yeah, thank you,
yes.
Commissioner Hurley. That's really good feedback, and we'll make sure that we've got that addressed when we bring a full draft back.
thank you. Because some of the things that I've attended already here brought up some things that were a surprise to me personally, that climate change can affect things this way. I just want to make sure that that's in front of everybody in the town if they want to look at it. So, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Nothing for me on this goal, so I think we're good.
Okay, then I will move on to goal 2, which is ensure that public and private development, redevelopment, infrastructure, and facilities projects are resilient to climate change. This one speaks a lot to the actual design, material selection, and construction techniques for all kinds of public and private projects in the city. This would include buildings, homes, commercial buildings, public facilities. It would also include things like utilities and roadways. Are there questions about this goal?
All right, Vice Chair Kokup.
Okay, so I heard that something changed, where there has to be a non-electric heating source available to each resident. Would that be in line with this goal? Is that sort of the idea?
Yes, that would provide the kind of redundancy that would be a great step for an individual's resilience needs.
Okay, yeah, that's great.
Commissioner Murza? Commissioner Murphy?
No, nothing right now.
Commissioner Hurley?
Oh, just a question about, does this tend to target new development or is this for existing structures, public and private?
This frankly should be both. It should look, I mean, I think your biggest bang for the buck is going to be in new construction where it's sited, designed, built from the ground up to have resilience features built into it. But it does also cover retrofits. And when we start talking about greenhouse gas emissions reduction, we're going to talk a little bit about adaptive reuse and encouraging the retention of existing buildings as a greenhouse gas emissions reduction strategy. And retrofit for resilience purposes would also be covered by this goal. This could be things like installing a heat pump in your home as a way to more effectively manage climate control in your home, or different filtration systems that would let you filter wildfire smoke and particulate matter more effectively. So it would cover all of that.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yeah, quick question. On one of the policies and tactics, it says improve transportation mode choice and connectivity to expand emergency response and evacuation options. Can you, I guess, expand on that or explain that a little bit more clearly? I understand, obviously, why improving mode choice is something we would want that would support this goal, but how it connects to like connectivity with emergency and evacuation response. Can you clarify that a little bit?
Yeah, essentially, the more routes you have to evacuate, the easier it is to get people out. So if people can evacuate by bicycle, on foot, other modes that aren't getting into a car and hitting a congested road, that's the mode choice aspect, giving people more options that are readily available to them, whether they have a vehicle or not, or a friend with a vehicle, whatever. On the connectivity piece, having a street grid or some other kind of well-connected system of roads and pathways, make sure that people don't get stuck at dead ends so they can move more efficiently out of the city or the disaster area.
Got it. And then in the, I think there's, yeah, so in the reduced density in the wildlife urban interface and increased density in more urban areas to accommodate growth allocations while reducing risk. I mean, if you could just expand on that one a little bit, I have a sense of that, but I think it would be helpful to hear your kind of explanation on that.
Yeah. So for those of you that may not be familiar, the wildland urban interface is the area where kind of more urban development falls off and you start to see a lot lower density, more suburban or rural style development. There tends to be a lot more vegetation, um, a lot more naturally managed vegetation that's just kind of left to its own devices, as it were. And that's where you see a lot of challenges in the emergency response. It's harder to get to those places. They're not well connected, for example, in many cases. And they are also more difficult to contain because they're right on the edge of wildlands. So they have kind of a broader fuel range to spread to and that sort of thing. So reducing development in that area to keep it at a more rural level of development, a more rural scale, helps kind of reduce the risk. There will be fewer incidences that require an emergency response to those areas. At the same time, we all are obligated to accept our fair share of growth in our communities. And so the trade-off of suppressing development in the wildland urban interface area would be that you need to accommodate that somewhere else in your community. And so other places are looking at options for densification. That's a strategy that Snoqualmie could use as well. You would densify in areas that are like your downtown core or other areas that are already developed at a more urban scale. And it doesn't need to be a lot, right? We're talking kind of like what would you do with the development that could otherwise go at the fringe of your city? Where could that amount of development go elsewhere in your community? We're not talking going from like 3 stories to 8 stories. We're talking about maybe adopting middle housing provisions.
Got it. Understood. Thanks for the clarification.
Sure.
If I could just add one point of clarification too that I'm noticing is the policies are laid out in the left-hand column, and then in the right-hand column, those are examples of what it might look like to implement those policies. So the policies themselves focus on the left side. The right side just gives some additional background, but to the questions that you asked, I think it would be good to maybe add a little clarification to some of what that might look like based on what we
Yes.
heard.
Yeah, and the this might look like column is illustrative only. Those things aren't the only implementation strategies that would come from these goals or policies. They are ideas, they are things that other communities are doing, but that doesn't mean that that's what Snoqualmie has to do if you choose to accept these goals and policies.
Got it. And they don't exactly like, for example, like 2.1 going across the goal 2.1 doesn't exactly, the policies on the right are rolled up all into 2.1 through 2.7. They're not like
Correct.
responding across. Is that right? Just want to make sure I'm reading it right.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
some of the implementation actions pertain to more than one policy or yeah.
Got it. Okay, great.
Mhm.
Which I really like, and I'm sorry to keep interjecting here, but that is really helpful, I think, when you're trying to go through these comprehensive plans and you read these policies, but you're like, what does that mean? So I feel like this is really helpful to give ideas and kind of stimulate more conversations and things around, what do we do to make these policies work? So.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners? No? The only thing, yeah, I think that was very helpful clarification because frankly, if if we were making a recommendation tonight, I'd be very hesitant about including that provision for reduced density if that's committing Snoqualmie to that course of action. So that's very good clarification. All right. I think we're good on goal 2.
All right, then. Goal 3, ensure the protection and recovery of ecosystems, including streams, riparian zones, wetlands, and floodplains to provide healthy habitats and watersheds in a changing climate. This one speaks to a lot of the natural features that are already protected by critical areas ordinances, but takes it a little bit further to address recovery. As I'm sure many or all of you know, wetlands, riparian zones, healthy forests, all of these features, floodplains that are well connected and functioning as they develop, or not, not develop, but as they kind of grew over time. All of these features provide some really valuable functions, including flood storage, slowing the velocity of stormwater, filtering stormwater as it's flowing through those before it hits a stream to protect the species that live in the stream. Continuing your protection and focusing on recovery and potentially the expansion of some of these systems will be a really valuable action in terms of developing community resilience.
All right. Open up for questions, comments. Vice Chair Coco?
This is when I will be interested, this is when I'll be interested to see what our plan is, because I know when we looked at, originally with the, what stage was that at? When we looked at
Critical
the
areas ordinance.
there's like half of Snoqualmie. So, yeah, I totally agree with the intent. And I just think what we decide to include in terms of implementation strategies will be incredibly important. That's it.
All right. Commissioner Mruzak?
I'm good.
Commissioner Murphy?
Questions?
The only concern I would have with any of this is when we talk about increasing wetlands and additional water retention, what that potentially would do to the insect population in the area. And as long as we're taking that into account as well, having lived in areas where they've done this and the mosquitoes went rampant. And that's something that we don't want to be dealing with here. And that's going to upset the ecosystem as well. So just want to make sure that that is taken into account here. I'm assuming it would be. I just thought it'd be worth pointing out.
No, very good. Okay, that's it for goal 3.
Okay, great. Goal 4, protect and enhance the climate resilience of urban forests by implementing resilient approaches to forest management. And Chris prompted me on this one. He said that you guys already do a lot of this. So I'm pretty excited that we get to talk a little bit more about urban forestry management.
We have a great urban forestry program in Snoqualmie. Award-winning, yes, that's correct.
Vice Chair Coco?
I don't think I really understand what this will accomplish, so I don't have any comment or questions or comments yet.
For clarity, we're just, this goal is saying, hey, let's double down on forest management?
Yes, so it's looking at your urban forest as an amenity, but also an asset. Urban forests provide a lot of what are called co-benefits in this case. Not only do they do some of the things that we just talked about related to ecosystems, where they take up a lot of stormwater, floodwaters, they provide cooling, they provide a lot of great evapotranspiration for the management of urban heat island effect. They are not only beautiful, but an excellent tool for developing community resilience. And so managing your urban forest in a way that is climate resilient is going to be really important to protect that. So that looks at things like proactively managing disease and pest issues, that kind of thing, to make sure that all of your urban forest assets remain healthy. And yeah, I guess that's kind of the gist.
Thank you. Yeah, so if you remember, and his name escapes me, our urban forest manager,
Jason Battles.
Jason Battles. Yeah, I remember him speaking to us about they're doing an experiment in Washington State about bringing like tree species from Eastern Washington
Mhm.
and from California, which basically represent the climate that we think we're moving towards.
Yeah.
And they're experimenting with planting them now to see how they'll do in Western Washington. So I guess and it talks to that a little bit with adopt city policies that prioritize the selection of drought tolerant and pest
Right.
resistant. So
And diversity.
yeah,
I must have missed that planning commission, but I did a tree planting and he explained the same thing.
oh there you go.
And it was really good. And the whole event was so good.
All good.
Yeah.
Commissioner Muzak,
Good.
Commissioner Murphy, Commissioner Hurley.
I just would hope that any plan we put in place would also account for potential changes with federal funding on this kind of thing too.
Yeah.
That's obviously become a thing. I don't want to get into a political discussion, but that's obviously something that's potentially happening right now too. So understanding what the impact of that would be.
All right, thank you for goal 4.
Thank you. Okay. Goal 5, ensure that cultural resources and practices, including significant historic sites and culturally important traditional foods and natural resources, are resilient to the impacts of extreme weather and other natural hazards worsened by climate change.
Vice Chair Kilcup,
No, none for me.
Commissioner Muzak,
Good.
Commissioner Murphy, Commissioner Hurley.
Nothing, thanks.
I'm
Right.
just reading it again.
It's lengthy. It's pretty big. It talks about cultural resources and practices, but it also has this historic tie-in for historic buildings and whatnot. So it's a pretty broad one.
I think the advantage that Chair Testman and I have is we've been in all these climate planning action team meetings where we've had lots of, discussions around what's important in the city. And Jason Battles is also part of that team. And that's helped us kind of pull these policies together around these goals.
I guess I do have a question.
Yes.
The question I have is, I assume historical sites and culturally important would include the Snoqualmie tribe and any sites that we're working with them to include that as part of what we would identify, not just historical to the city of Snoqualmie.
But culturally too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Yes, correct. That should certainly include consultation with tribes. It speaks to culturally important traditional foods and natural resources. Those are things like salmon runs and other kinds of animal species that may have been harvested for subsistence, but also plant foods, forage materials. And so close coordination with the tribes should be part of the implementation of this one.
Councilmember Johnson.
I guess what I'm wondering is foods. I can't make pineapples grow in Snoqualmie. So if the climate changes such that certain foods just literally cannot live here, I just don't know how we can ensure that biology happens the way that we want it to.
I,
But-
for one, am hoping for avocados.
Right. So I'm just wondering like what that means.
Somebody's trying to buy a house. And this could be rephrased to replace ensure with
That's what I was
something
getting
like support the resilience of cultural resources and practices.
I think that gets at my concern because I can't promise that the foods that people love that grow here are going to continue to grow if the climate changes. Just that's facts, as the young kids say these days. So thank you.
I forgot. I went all the way through, right? Okay. I'm just gonna say it. Is goal number 5 unique to Snoqualmie? Is it a state recommended one?
This is a state recommended goal. Yes.
Okay. My concern, were we to keep it in what we ultimately recommend to council and were they to adopt it, is just that we're on the hook for resources for things that probably fall more within the purview of the sovereign government of the Snoqualmie tribe. So that's my concern with that one, but just early
Yeah.
days on this, but
Yes, and that's a concern that Chris and I have discussed frequently. You know, you will now be obligated to provide a 5-year progress report, implementation progress report on your comprehensive plan. Um, I don't know the extent to which progress towards community resilience or greenhouse gas emissions reduction are going to be expected to be part of that. That the template for that hasn't really been written yet. But that is a requirement that communities are going to be expected to accomplish. And you know, resource allocation in terms of making progress on all of these goals and policies would be really challenging. Um, I would encourage you all to consider which goals you'd like to focus on the most and try and narrow them down. I'm not saying any goal is more or less important than any of the others, but certainly my recommendation would be to pick just a few to focus on and consider adding the others in the future. Um, but
well,
also it's hard for me to say which ones are the ones that you should focus on. That's kind of why we're in this feedback stage.
yeah. Would we be in compliance with state law were we not to include goal 5?
You need to do these things in your climate resilience sub-element. So you do need to support environmental justice. That does include consideration of the tribes and other people that have not historically been well engaged in planning processes, may not have as many resources. Um, so you do need to take consideration for those groups. It does not specifically have to take the form of goal 5 as written. Um, you your element needs to do these 3 things. However you do that, it
And
just needs
stand
to
up
do
to
these.
scrutiny. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Chair, oh, sorry, you can, we can go.
No, no, go ahead.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yeah, I would just echo the chair's comments that I think that one is like, there's just has to be pretty tailored to us and our kind of unique circumstances. And I echo everything that Chair Tessman kind of said on that. Given, you know, our relationship with the tribe and obviously their sovereignty, et cetera. I want to make sure we're cognizant of all of that. So.
I'm going to move
Are we good on
back to
5?
goal 5.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Goal 6, ensure that the local economy is resilient to climate disruptions and fosters business opportunities associated with climate mitigation and adaptation. This is one that you'll notice doesn't have a very robust list of policies under it. And we would love your specific input on whether you think this should be retained or if it should be maybe moved into a policy under one of the other goals. Really interested in hearing what you think should happen with this one, since it just doesn't have a lot of meat under it.
Yeah, if I may. So having sat in the working group for this, you know, if I had to pick a top 3, I'd actually say that this is one of the top 3, right? Because Snoqualmie is a tourist town, and the tourism is centered on a natural feature, and that's the Snoqualmie Falls, right? So, which is going to be extremely vulnerable to what we're anticipating are the impacts of climate change. So I don't think it should be subsumed by another goal. If it only has one, you know, sub goal, I think that's fine. But I do think it's important enough to stand on its own. Sorry for going first. Vice Chair Kokup.
Yeah, I agree with what you just said.
Commissioner Marizia?
Yeah, just a comment. There was massive business disruption due to COVID. And we try to do a lot of things, and the federal government and everybody tried to do a lot of things. It'd be nice to know which of those things worked and which of them didn't. And the ones that worked, maybe we put in here. right? Like PPP and stuff like that.
Yeah, certainly we can add some additional policies beneath the goal.
Yeah, I'd support expanding this quite a bit. And I think another element to this is disaster preparedness and how the city can support local businesses in, you know, in the event of flooding or recovery from disasters, things like that. So I think there's quite a bit more that I think we can put our heads together and think about here. Because I agree with Chair. I when I looked through this, I thought like the small business piece was like one of the top elements and goals, and would certainly want it to be like standalone. And if we could just kind of blow it out a little bit, I think that would be great.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Hurley?
Yeah, I'd like to reiterate that. And there's some wording in here, fosters business opportunities associated with climate mitigation and adaptation. I'd love to see more suggestions about how other towns have done this and what they've done to encourage climate-related businesses to start and flourish within the town, because it's just benefiting us all across the board. So I'd love to see more suggestions on this.
Okay, I can have those prepared for your next meeting.
Great. All right. Oh, Director Davis?
Just real quick, I'm hearing that goal 6 is an important goal for the commissioners. But I also wanted to point out that goal 2 is somewhat similar, and I'm wondering if it would be possible to combine those two sentences into one goal and have more policies like we just discussed. It's a thought.
Those feel different to me.
Yeah.
They feel different. Okay. I just want to make sure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay. Any other commentary on goal 6 or its sub policy?
I have a question.
Yes.
Will we see what we're anticipating as part of this in terms of what climate change could impact the local economy and therefore what our plan is for that?
We don't have like an economic analysis of that. We have some analysis about risk and exposure that we can present, but it's certainly more qualitative than what you're probably hoping to see.
Okay.
I know you're talking about like First Street Foundation analysis of like the risks to, you know.
I'm not. I don't have anything in mind. I'm just thinking with, let's say, more impactful snowstorms. What is the impact to businesses, right? What are we doing as a city to help that resiliency be in place for the businesses and the residents? You know, whether it's that the roads are clear or, I don't know. Yeah.
Longer ski season.
Please. Yeah.
Longer only on one end, I think. What you'll
Or
see is something
power
more along the
restoration.
lines of changing precipitation patterns lead to shifts in stream flow timing. So like when the falls are most spectacular is going to be at a different time of year. The amount of water that's coming down the falls will be different. The season during which people will find it enjoyable to float the river is going to be different, and may not line up as well with the hot summer months, because you'll start to see more water volume in the winter. So that will be the nature of what you'll see.
Mhm. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else on 6? Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Right. Goal 7, advance environmental justice and community well-being by prioritizing equitable climate policies, inclusive decision-making, and access to healthy, resilient environments for all residents. This one really, really speaks to that third requirement and the focus on environmental justice.
I'm going to go from right to left. Commissioner Hurley?
Nothing, thank you.
Commissioner Murphy?
No comments.
Commissioner Maruziak?
Okay.
Vice Chair Kokup.
This feels like an overarching goal, like that this goal would apply to all goals. And that's just my only thought.
Yeah, so maybe the power is that it harmonizes them.
Oh. Okay. Okay. I think whenever we have this kind of like lofty language or for a goal is like, so how are we gonna do this? Is really to get away from the flowery language and really get clear on how we're going to provide these things to offset the environmental justice.
No, I mean, just 7.1.2.3. And how it could look like was outreach materials for senior citizens, right? And what happens if it's a lot of smoke? And do we have PPE for that or HVAC upgrades? I mean, and make sure that we, senior citizens, those who are medically limited and, things like that. I mean, that makes sense to me. So even though that's very overarching, the 3 examples they give here are pretty specific. So.
Okay. I need to think on it more. Yeah.
So like, is your feedback for subsequent sessions to try and make that more precise, you're saying? The verbiage of goal 7? More concrete?
I'm not saying more concrete, just I'm tracking.
Mullen, okay,
Mhm.
gotcha. Okay. No, I think to Commissioner Maruziak's point, especially on the right, it's very specific, but even on the left, with what we'd be committing ourselves to, I think that's good. Yeah, I like it. No other thoughts on 7?
Okay, great. That brings us to 8, build organization. I'm sorry, my image didn't come up. Build organizational capacity and integrate climate resilience across city systems and decision-making processes. And this one is really focused on developing skills and knowledge within city staff and building that kind of thinking into how the city is administering all of its
Yeah, so I
services.
think this one actually speaks to several of the concerns that were raised throughout, so that's good. I'll go from the end as well. Commissioner Hurley?
I agree. This actually gets down to the meat of it quite a bit. I don't have anything specific.
Commissioner Murphy?
No, nothing on this one.
Commissioner Maruziak?
I'm good.
Vice Chair Kokup?
Nope.
All right, we like it.
Okay, great. Glad to hear that. All right, before I move on to greenhouse gas emissions, are there any other comments, any feedback about resilience goals, resilience policies?
Vice Chair Kokup?
I'm still interested in that comment that you said about how we're going to be measuring against this over the next 5 years, and just if we wanted to narrow it down, that might be suggested. I think these are great goals, but also, how much resources do we actually have if we're drawing our own measuring stick for the next 5 years?
What priority are those going to be in?
Absolutely, yeah. And how would those be impacted by the funding support or not?
Yes,
Yeah.
both local and not local.
Yes, I strongly encourage all of you to review the goals and policies through that lens. It's wonderful to have a lot of goals, but it is unlikely that the city will have the resources to progress on every single recommended goal and policy in this element, considering kind of the breadth of the comprehensive plan generally. And so thinking about where you want to focus those resources will be very helpful.
Perfect. I think we're ready for greenhouse gases.
Okay. So I do have some slides about the inventory. to start with. This is the same process summary. We're kind of here in the middle. We still need to set emissions reduction targets, which we will do kind of after we've talked about kind of where you want to focus in your goals and policies. So we're kind of flip-flopping these 2 steps. Anyway, so I do have an update on the greenhouse gas inventory that we got from K4C. It is a draft. Chris told me that he maybe went over it at a pretty high level last time. I can skip it or I can go through it again. What would you like me to do with the inventory?
Certainly push back, but I feel like at this point, we'd just like to jump into the draft element.
Okay. All right. Bear
Okay.
with me while I flip through this. Okay, so here's the list of recommended goals. We have 5. I will go through them one by one again. So goal 1 on the greenhouse gas emissions reduction goal is to improve the efficiency of Snoqualmie's transportation systems and services to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. This is this kind of ties in with some of the connectivity pieces that we talked about related to resilience. Those are their co-benefits. They work together. This having more options for different kinds of transportation and different transportation routes let people move more efficiently through the city to get where they need to go. And this is not just focused on the road, this is focused on all systems and services. So this would include sidewalks, bike paths, or multi-use paths, transit, the whole shebang.
Going from right to left, Commissioner Hurley.
Nothing just yet. Sorry, I'm still absorbing this.
And I'll come back if something pops up. Commissioner Murphy?
Yeah, this one's great. And I think I would maybe suggest that instead of work with King County Metro or Snow Valley Transit, I would maybe consider thinking about something more specific. So piloting new services with both of those entities could be an interesting way to bring new forms of transit into the valley. Obviously, we're served by King County Metro's bus line and Snow Valley's transits, Access a Ride. But I think there's a room for another more novel kind of form of transit that, there's plenty of models and vendors out there. But looking at how we can pilot something with both of those agencies might be a more like actionable way to think about this. So I really like that. And I think just generally though, and this speaks to like just the broader point you made on the last kind of batch of goals is, I think looking at how we can do fewer things better versus like, 9 or 10 different goals and policies would be like, as we're just thinking about, I think, it's a broader conversation about how to cull down some of the goals or some of the kind of policies that may ladder up to the goals to help us prioritize like what really matters, right? Because if we have so many of these, then what's really important, right? But going back to my first point, I think looking at piloting with some of those transit agencies on new, novel forms of transit in our area could be a good way to get folks, out of single occupancy automobiles and using more sustainable forms of transportation.
Commissioner Murza?
I'd just like to amplify what Commissioner Murphy said. 1.2 is the lowest hanging fruit. It's the most bang for the buck on reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And yeah, it's not work with. We should just do it. Provide more frequent, convenient transit service, by every which way we can. To me, that's the most bang for the buck of everything I've seen.
Vice Chair Cookup?
I agree. I also feel like this is probably our big opportunity. If I recall correctly, when we covered this, like we get a certain allocation of airport traffic and certainly there's lots of people who are commuting on through that we can't control that as well. But it is this virtuous or vicious cycle of the less transportation that's provided, the more people need to have individual occupant vehicles, and the whole system becomes more dependent in that way. Whereas if you try not to, there's not a lot, there's like one bus route that, or two that come through Snoqualmie. So we don't, yeah, so I agree very much and amplify.
Commissioner
Yeah,
Murphy?
one more thing to add, like how cool would it be to have like a service that went from like the Ridge to downtown Snoqualmie to like right by the movie theater, North Bend, to the outlet mall, and just like kind of this like shuttle, you know?
Totally.
Like I think a lot of people would use that, right? To like, especially on nice days, not have to drive. And there are, I think, low cost ways to pilot into like these types of things that are like low lift. We can try it for a short period of time. And if people take it, great. And if they don't, we move on to something else, you know?
Yeah.
I
And I
believe
think
we
this-
actually already have some of these in place.
Well, there's like the little
Yeah, there's
bus.
Snow Valley Transit, which I think is more on like an on-demand type of a type of service, and also serves, I believe, seniors and folks with disabilities. But I think just kind of like a fixed route, something that's like not quite that, but also not quite a full city bus could be an interesting.
Just a loop.
Yeah, like a
Right?
loop. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's really
Love it.
possible, like, in Portland, they have like the streetcar loop and you just get on it. And I mean, if you just stay on it, just brings you back to where you were. No harm, no foul. I think another piece of this that's really important is communication. So like, I know those little buses, I think they're adorable. I think they're for everybody. I have no idea how you would go about getting one of those little buses.
I didn't either. I had to look this up today while I was
Yeah.
reading this material and looking up the routes. There's actually one that goes to Issaquah, and there's one that goes around the valley. And these things will take you apparently all the way up to, the northern end of the Snoqualmie Valley if you request it. So, but you have to do it a couple of days in advance. But
Yeah.
getting more information out about this, I think, is critical.
The other piece is if we are to do any kind of trials or pilot programs, I think we make that really clear. It's like, if you think this is a good idea, get on it, right? Because I think people are busy and they'll get to it later and we don't actually get to get the pulse of what everybody wants. So if we say this is like a 3-month trial, and if you think this is a good idea, try it out and give your feedback.
Or on a climate change holiday or something, like everybody try taking the bus today, or, there's ways we can sort of encourage people
Yeah,
to do it on
totally.
specific times.
Yeah.
No, this is great. I think it actually kind of goes back and ties into goal 6, right? Because, for example, I don't know if y'all have seen it, but Bellevue has a downtown free ride
Yeah.
service on all electric vehicles. Some are like souped up golf carts, others are like just an electric Hyundai Santa Fe, you name it or whatever. But the link, I think, between the two is, think about all the people who want to patronize Fusion or why can't I think of the brewery? No Boat or even Volition, right? We can reduce the prevalence of DUI. We can reduce the carbon footprint of those going by offering some sort or piloting some sort of service like that. Obviously, this is getting too specific. But, I think you get the feedback right on those two. And I think the point is that there's actually a connection between two goals. So that's great. Oh,
I love
and
the
then
enthusiasm.
the only other one I would add, and it's not, I guess it would be on the right side, not on the left side, is we know that there are a handful of major employers, represented in Snoqualmie, right? And so, and many of them have transportation services, but I would put something to the effect of looking, Snoqualmie should be a lot of these employers are looking at ways to reduce their own greenhouse gas emissions, right? And so Snoqualmie should be looking at ways to partner, increase the number of routes from Snoqualmie to these employers, to actually make that even more viable, and to view those as partners rather than just kind of passively having those operations happen, if that makes sense.
Just everything we're saying, it'd be good to use the Snoqualmie Valley, right? Because then it becomes easier, right? Falls City, Snoqualmie, North Bend, all the way to Coronation, right?
For the loop.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely. That would be so great. Yeah, I think also what I was thinking about, this is kind of a side comment to goal number 1, but what I would like to see is a table where we have the strategy and how many of these things it could hit affect, so that we can prioritize properly what we emphasize. Does that make sense? So the strategy itself is like the first column, and the rows are all the different goals it can help achieve across all these, because there's just so many goals.
Right, yeah, you mean the list of potential implementation actions? Like how they all map to all of the different goals and policies?
Or are you saying the goal of the element and then mapping the actual, 1 through 8, like supports those things?
I'm saying actually prioritizing it by the right column.
Okay.
The right column is illustrative only. Snoqualmie may choose to do things vastly different than that list. So I want that caveat to be out there that we're setting goals and policies, the specific implementation actions. It's great to think about them now, but we're not setting implementation actions currently.
Okay.
Okay.
Anything else for goal 1? Okay, thank you.
All right, goal number 2 for greenhouse gas emissions reduction, foster infill development in downtown Snoqualmie and other mixed use areas and transit corridors. It's kind of is aspirational related to transit accessibility, but we know that there is some transit planning ahead.
If I could just really quick say this goal doesn't match what's on our handout.
Oh goodness, I'm so sorry.
Our
Let me.
handout says foster higher density land uses in downtown Snoqualmie and other mixed use areas and transit corridors. It's not a lot different, but it's enough
Okay.
different.
Okay. Yes. I am sorry. It should be higher intensity land uses. That would include infill development. I apologize for that. Use the handout.
Okay.
All right, Commissioner Hurley?
I guess I'm just a little bit curious sort of what this would look like for our town. They've done a fair bit of this in North Bend. They've put in some, 4-story mixed use buildings that have shops on the bottom and apartments and condominiums on the top. Just curious sort of what this might look like for our town. And obviously we're trying to protect the historic nature of the town, and there's sort of a mix of old and new and all that kind of thing. But I'd be curious as to sort of what form this would take. Every time I hear higher density, it sort of brings a couple of different images to mind that are kind of contradictory, quite frankly. So,
Yeah, I concur with that. Commissioner Murphy?
Yeah, I think in theory, all these sound great. I think it's like practically like working through and getting this kind of getting a Snoqualmie solution here will be the challenge, right? As you're talking about like, densifying downtown. So there's a lot that we could talk about here, and we're late in the night. So I think this one though it's important, but one that like we'll have to like really custom and tailor to the needs of and the realities of Snoqualmie. Because right now I think some of this feels good in theory, but I think obviously would run up against some issues. So that's all I got.
Commissioner Muzak?
Yeah, I mean, just to comment, if you look behind us, the Rails project is an attempt of what that would look like within the deals, and that was a lot of bracket exclamations on the approval of that one. So at any rate, that's one comment. But I want to focus on the walkability aspect of this. It's pretty good up and down the parkway, but it's not that easy to get like to the ridge to downtown. I mean, you can do it, but you got to try. And if you get just outside of downtown, like if you want to go all the way to high school, forget it. I mean, you really better have your head on a swivel because it gets downright dangerous there. So I think there's a lot we could do with not a lot of funding on the walkability for all of Snoqualmie. And, take the ridge all the way down, say, basically to Meadowbrook. How could you do that? Because I think we think walkability, we just think, Center Street and historic downtown. And you really ought to connect them. And there's something we could do with that. I think that's another, low hanging fruit, but something we could do.
Commissioner Hurley?
I was curious whether we'd ever looked into electric bikes or those kinds of things, which is how a lot of these towns solve this problem. We've got, as you mentioned, two disparate sort of town centers. And if there's some way that we could connect them that way. I know electric bikes came up, I think, a couple of meetings ago, not very favorably. So, but if there's some other sort of, there are ready-made solutions like this where we could potentially get a company to invest in setting up that infrastructure here at a relatively low cost.
Yeah, in my mind, like, if you did that right, you'd be looking at like maybe modifying the parkway to have green lanes on each side or whatever. So then you've deconflicted pedestrians and that e-traffic. Vice Chair Coco.
So we just got an e-bike and I took it last week to pick up my daughter at Little Stars downtown. The intersection that's with 202 and Snoqualmie Parkway, that would be very low hanging fruit for I think what you're saying. Like I almost got hit twice by just people not paying attention, trying to take their free ride or I don't know, holding their cell phone and their coffee at the same time. And so, you know, moving or having the option to cross up by Better Way and then a path that comes down cleanly, you just avoid all of that.
Yeah.
And that's like such a nothing option. I mean, that just seems like such an easy thing to do.
And it's providing potentially additional pedestrian traffic lanes as well, if we could kind of combine those into, just make it very walkable, very rideable, very
Yeah.
easy to get through.
Specifically, there's a trail that exists. You can run it, Fisher Creek Trail, across the parkway. It drops you down and dumps you off on 384 behind where all the school buses are, and it dumps you right downtown. I mean, if that got just paved, boom, you'd
Yeah,
be there.
right.
For both electric bikes and pedestrian, yeah.
Yeah, because I was also looking at how I could get to Fall City for if my son gets.
That's a little trickier, yeah.
Well, there is a path though, when I looked it up, back over the back of the ridge to get over to Fall City. So I think that would be something that would be cool. Your idea plus looking at a few different cut through enhancements.
And that's one of the things that was described on here was ways of connecting
Yeah, exactly.
areas and adding additional avenues to escape in a disaster or to just
Totally.
provide more connectivity.
Yeah.
And seeing what this is. Somebody else was bringing up with me a couple of weeks ago that that trail that goes from the back of the ridge out to Fall City. And I mean, I've been there 3 years. I had no idea that was even there. So just trying to sort of
It's a
make these
brutal
things.
trail, the bike, just saying.
Oh,
Is it-
really?
It's very steep.
Oh,
I
good
d-
to know.
I do just want to keep us in order.
Fair enough.
Do the hour. Anything else for Councilmember Jones?
Yeah, just popped into my mind. I'm actually not looking at the list of the policies. So I'm curious under goal 2 if this is mentioned, but with regard to zoning, I've brought it up about 1 million times before since I joined the council. But if you look at the zoning for the city of Snoqualmie, it's a bunch of pretty colors downtown and then a big beige blob covering the ridge. And as we potentially move into zoning the ridge, like most mixed use developments are eventually zoned, that would be one of the things to look at for improving density. It doesn't mean that someone has to, you know, knock their house down and build higher density or something. It's just giving them the opportunity that they could at some point. Whereas right now on the ridge, you can't do anything.
Mhm.
It's just, and I don't think that that's really functional for cities. That, you know, once one building is built one time, then 1,000 years from now, it's going to be that exact same building standing there. I don't know. It doesn't sound very sustainable. So at any rate, as we move forward, one of the things we could look at is especially around center, looking at the density and thinking about, does this make sense when we actually zone that area for the future? So that could be an application that we could look at.
Mhm.
Perhaps not calling it out by name in this exercise officially in comprehensive plan, but just the concept of looking at the zoning, especially in Snoqualmie Ridge.
That's a great point. Yeah, I think the infill development is something, obviously we have to do it if we're going to increase our population and trying to stay away from the growth boundaries, but nobody really wants it in their backyard. And I would say it's more appropriate on the ridge, especially near Center Street from a scale perspective, than other areas. So yeah, I think that's a great point.
All right. Thank you. We're ready for
Okay.
3.
All right, thank you. Love this discussion. Thank you very much. Okay, goal number 3, increase housing diversity and supply within urban growth areas to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and support environmental justice. This one is talking about how when you give people more options within an urbanized area, they're already closer to amenities, services, employment hubs, transit hubs, all of that that would enable them to drive fewer miles.
Commissioner Hurley,
This feels very similar to what we've already talked about, so nothing further.
Commissioner Murphy? Nothing. Commissioner Muzak?
Just a caveat, this would require a different vision for the city of Snoqualmie. I mean, quite frankly, a very different vision for it. That's all.
Yes. Vice Chair Kokup?
I agree.
Maybe it's quibbling over the wrong thing, but when we talk about urban growth area, I thought we were actually like outside the urban growth area
All of
in
Snoqualmie.
Snoqualmie. Yeah.
No,
The way that the Growth Management Act works is that the incorporated city is an urban growth area, and you've got some amount of land outside of that. That is where urban growth is focused. So even though you are not one of the core cities like Seattle or Bellevue, you are still technically in an urban
We're our
growth
own.
area.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So you have like very limited areas where potential annexations could occur. All of those areas are in your urban growth boundary, inside your urban growth boundary. But you got your population allocations. Those are aligned with your role as one of the smaller cities in King County.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. I
And
would
this
just echo.
we could change that term to say, increase housing diversity and supply within the city. That's very easy for us to do, if that would be
No,
easy.
I mean, I'm just wrong. If Snoqualmie has its own, then that's fine. Yeah, I would just echo the sentiments of the others. What we're envisioning with these goals is a really dense city. It's certainly denser than it is now. So
Anything would be denser.
yeah, maybe. Okay, I think we're good on 3.
Okay. Goal 4, ensure that
Direct-
buildings use,
Forgive me, Director Davis.
I just wanted to say goal 3 seems like it belongs in the housing element, and I wanted to look at our housing element that we just went through for the comp plan and see how there may be goals that are similar to this. And maybe it belongs, maybe there's already something that addresses this. I don't know. So I have a note here to double check that.
yeah,
we
if
had a
you've
lot of
got
conversations
any,
on middle housing.
any of the middle housing goals would be well aligned with this goal.
Yeah, I think on the comp plan, it allows for density in increasing that, but it doesn't tie it to as a reduction of greenhouse gas emissions and support environmental justice.
Okay,
Well,
that's where it
yeah,
differentiates.
environmental justice, yeah.
And this could be adapted to fit into the housing element if that's the preference. That's certainly we have to make some other climate related changes in other elements per the state law, so it would not be a big lift to move this one to the housing element instead. Okay,
Great.
goal 4. Ensure that buildings use renewable energy, conservation, and efficiency technologies and practices to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. This, certainly there's a, reliance on PSE's grid, but we do have different renewable options available. We also have techniques related to building design and construction, siting, that makes energy usage much more efficient. We also have appliances that are much higher efficiency than they used to be. Those are all kind of concepts that are rolled up into this goal.
I'm gonna go left to right, Vice Chair Kokup.
Um, yeah, I mean, I think this is fine.
Commissioner Muzak.
Hate to say this, but Don't let this goal conflict with the dual use heating or dual source heating.
Where's that?
No, I'm saying you've got renewable energy conservation, reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So one of the thoughts of that is, okay, so let's not use natural gas anymore, right? And if you do that, then you don't have your
Yeah.
alternate.
Non-electric.
Yeah, then you're not resilient.
Uh-huh.
Then you're not resilient. So I'd almost add just that caveat, don't have it impact resilience. Don't do this and lose resilience. Do this and still be resilient.
Uh-huh.
Commissioner Murphy?
Is the requirement for all publicly owned buildings to be powered completely by renewable energy? Is that like a state mandate, or is that something we'd be doing like above and beyond what the state requires?
It's voluntary. It's not there's no state mandate. It's a suggestion in Commerce's guidebook, and it's an option certainly, but there's no requirement to do that.
Okay, that's all for me.
Commissioner Hurley?
This does seem like a low-hanging fruit area as well to me. And the more information we can make available to the public about what their options are for doing this privately as well, I think would help us.
Agreed. Anything else on 4? All right. We're ready for 5.
Okay, friends, we're almost there. Goal 5, increase tree canopy cover to boost carbon sequestration, reduce heat islands, and improve air quality, prioritizing overburdened communities.
Can we increase our tree canopy cover? We have like,
According to the meeting I went to, we're maxed out, so I think we're doing very well with this.
Vice Chair Cook?
I'm curious, I don't know if this would apply or not, but one of the things that we talk about, since I have young children, is like in the summer and in the winter, it would be nice to have some covered areas for where you can be outside and play. So Timber Ridge has a covered play area, and so I don't know if this would make sense in this, but maybe it doesn't have to be tree canopy. Maybe we could provide some other spaces so that they're more useful year round.
I almost feel like that goes into that resilience goal.
Because it does provide shade in the summer, and it does the environmental justice piece as well. So yeah, I would just add that.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it fits here, but
As the parent of a toddler, I feel that in my soul.
yeah.
Councilmember Dunn?
2 things. Perhaps the first word could be optimize then, instead of necessitating an increase if we're already maxed out. And then with regard to shelters over playgrounds, we do have a separate document that I don't remember the name of. It's like the Parks Improvement Plan or something like that, where that was one of the things that was specifically called out by the council.
Great.
For inclusion in that.
Yeah, awesome.
Thank you.
We could also potentially revise this goal a little bit to consider tree canopy, but also other sources of carbon sequestration. I learned today, I have not had a chance to look into this, but I learned today that there is a sphagnum moss bog near Snoqualmie, and that is evidently an incredible carbon sink, but it's not very large anymore. And so potentially considering other natural resources that do these functions instead of just tree canopy might be appropriate. We could look into that if that would feel better as well.
Yeah, so like other forms of carbon sequestration and other forms of reduction of heat island.
Yeah.
I don't know how else we accomplish the air quality.
All good?
Yeah.
Commissioner Muzia?
Good.
Commissioner Murphy? Good. Commissioner Hurley?
And just to clarify what I said earlier, I believe we're maxed out in public spaces, not private spaces, was what I've been told. So again, like we were talking about with the solar, might be worthwhile to try and make these options available to private companies, citizens, homeowners, that kind of thing as well, and get more education there about what the benefits would be.
Great feedback. All right.
Thank you. Okay, well, we did it. Are there any other questions or comments? No, it is past well past 9 at this point, and if you'd prefer to be done with me, then I will bow out gracefully. But if there's anything else that you want to talk about with respect to either resilience or greenhouse gas emissions, please let me know.
No, this has been spectacular. Hopefully our feedback was helpful, and we look to see what comes back the next session.
Okay, yes, and in the meantime, again, I do encourage you to review the recommended goals and policies with your handouts through that lens of kind of resource scarcity. Where would you spend the city's money on progress on these goals and policies? And if you've got some specific feedback on that, please direct it to city staff to be passed along to our team.
Will do. Oh, Vice
Okay.
Chair Coco.
Yeah, this is great. Is it possible that we could put on the agenda a time that we could talk through these and more, to give that feedback? I don't know how else we could facilitate that.
Yes. So right now we're just trying to implement some draft goals and policies. I anticipate that we will have a more robust public engagement outreach during the summer and fall when we have special events. And it would also give the commissioners time to kind of go through these in more detail, if that would be helpful. We could probably, I'm sure there will be meetings that we'll be looking for things to fill. We're not planning to finalize the draft climate element before, the end of the year. So, okay.
Well, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you all. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. See you next
Likewise.
time.
All right, so that concludes old business. Moving on to other business items of planning commissioner interest. Vice Chair Coco.
So much based on what we just talked through, but no, nothing new.
Commissioner Maruziak.
Nothing at this time.
Commissioner Murphy.
Nothing. I don't want to get in trouble, so I'll table it for another forum.
Commissioner Hurley.
What he said.
Well, I want to get in trouble. No, just joking. Okay, nothing on my end. Director Davis, did you have anything for the upcoming schedule item?
No, other than I apologize for not having an upcoming schedule in your packet materials. I know I mentioned a couple months ago, like I'll get that revived again, but there's too many moving parts that I'm learning weekly that I feel like I'm going to have to reprioritize. So I don't have a good idea of what's important. I've got meetings set up to talk through some of the things that we currently have in the comp plan or that may be missing in the comp plan. I'm still looking into the development regulations that are required to make sure that we've adequately done all of those. So don't give up on me. I'm still working on knowing what all the things are that we need to work on. I may need to bring the critical areas ordinance back for further discussion. I know you made a recommendation on that, I believe in January, but some other questions have come up, so I may need to bring that back for further discussion. We've got the wireless code we need to talk about. I know Andrew's planning to bring the landmark designation and historic preservation back. But I would like to at least have something laid out so you kind of know what's coming. And I think that's helpful for everybody. And I also wanted to mention, I don't want to put you on the spot, Dina, but would it be an appropriate time to maybe just give the planning commissioners an update of what's appropriate to talk about during the planning commission meetings and what's not, just so that they don't feel like we scolded them and they're in trouble, but
That's a good question. So I was actually, I think we're planning, and I'm not sure when it will happen, to do a training, because I know we have like a new planning commissioner. Some of you have been doing this for a while, but may have been a while since, sorry, it's past my bedtime, been a while since you received a training just about welcome to being a planning commissioner. This is what your roles and duties are, and that would be included in that. you know, some of the items that came up earlier, there's a lot of moving parts right now, and it's something that we want to avoid kind of commenting on publicly because of what might be coming in the future.
Yeah, so hopefully that helps. I mean, as an advisory committee, we just have to be cognizant of like some of the things that, you know, for example, like when projects come before you, we want to be careful about like trying to redesign their projects, for example. But there's just certain parameters that we probably need to be more aware of what we can discuss, what's open for discussion, and what things probably shouldn't be discussed during the commission meetings.
We look forward to the training.
I just went through it.
All right. Well, without any further ado, I move that we conclude the planning commission for May 19th at 9:18. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Hey.
And good night.